Hello, I'm George Steele, the General Manager and Artistic Director of New York City Opera, and I invite you to subscribe to our wonderful 2010-2011 season, which features some extraordinary new music, some innovative takes on traditional repertoire, and an amazing roster of distinguished and emerging artists. The season includes 3 brand new productions, as well as, incredibly, the New York premieres of 4 operas by New York City composers. I'm very pleased to announce that this season we're adding, in addition to our opera productions, a concert series starring the wonderful orchestra of the New York City Opera and a lineup of stars: Christine Brewer, Kristen Chenoweth, Raul Esparza, Laurie Anderson, Lou Reed, and John Zorn. It should be an amazing series. Last season, I'm very pleased to say, many of our productions played to sold-out houses, so subscribing now is the only way to guarantee you'll have a seat at these not-to-be-missed performances. I'm very proud and pleased to tell you that we are opening our season with the New York City premiere of an opera by America's greatest composer for the theater, Leonard Bernstein. The piece is called A Quiet Place. It's a sequel to his 1950s opera Trouble in Tahiti. In fact, Trouble in Tahiti is folded into it as flashbacks. But the later work from 1984 is incredibly moving. It's a portrait of an American family.
The whole opera begins with this car crash, which is really, it's like this horrible event. And then we see this very dysfunctional family come together.
Bernstein, of course, is a composer that lived in a very unique straddling of musical worlds. So in his classical composition style, you get a very unique fusion of traditional classical music, of Broadway, of jazz, 20th century modernist music. A Quiet Place really unites all of those strands.
The text of it is very much the way that people really speak and the way that people really think, which, if you think about it, is kind of unusual. There's lots of ums and likes and ands and starting and stopping, and it's sort of as if David Mamet would write an opera.
With Bernstein's A Quiet Place, you have an American opera that hasn't been heard in New York ever, and that hasn't been produced in over 20 years.
And to lead us all through it, Christopher Alden, who directed Don Giovanni so movingly for us last season, is returning with this glorious production. It's a great way to open the season. It's hard to imagine that a composer as famous as Richard Strauss has a wonderful opera hiding in plain sight, but it's true in the case of Intermezzo, a marvelous piece of his that's seldom seen in New York City. We gave the last performance of it, and we're thrilled to bring it back to the stage.
A lot of Strauss's operas are about big topics, cosmic topics. Intermezzo is a very domestic comedy.
Strauss decided to write the libretto himself, about himself and his wife.
To put it in the most kind, tactful way, let's say she was formidable. Most of Strauss's friends, I would go so far as to say, feared her.
We're very excited that Mary Dunleavy is going to be taking on this role for the first time with our company. She has the perfect combination of comic timing, dramatic sense, and a beautiful voice. City Opera's production really made a case for this particular piece, and we're really excited to bring it back.
It's glorious music and a glorious show, and the great Leon Major is directing it. Should be a terrific evening. Two of the things for which New York City Opera is most famous meet up in our production of Donizetti's Elixir of Love. That is, casting of extraordinary rising stars and innovative takes on traditional repertoire. Well, in the Rising Stars department, you can't ask for better than Stefania Dovan, a Ukrainian-American soprano. She made her debut last season as Donna Anna in Don Giovanni, and she's joined by David Lomeli, a fantastic young tenor, one of the most exciting voices on the scene.
People talk about how he auditioned for us and we hired him on the spot. And in this situation, it is true. He auditioned for us and we hired him on the spot.
And the production itself is a hilarious Jonathan Miller take on Donizetti's old snake oil salesman story. It's set in the American Southwest in the 50s in a diner.
It's just a very tongue-in-cheek, irreverent, and American way of viewing the opera.
We suffer through the travails of Nemorino and Adina as they sort of fight their way towards their eventual getting together.
In a way, they're speaking 2 different languages. It's a very men are from Mars, women are from Venus kind of thing.
For over 60 years, New York City Opera has been pointing the way to the future. And we have a project this coming season which does just that. A triple bill of monodramas in one evening. 3 sopranos singing 3 solo shows by 3 different composers.
These are 3 great diva scenas. The prima donna at the footlights, just singing her heart out.
The first is John Zorn's small opera. It's about 12 minutes, called La Machine de Lettres. John is one of New York's and America's great composers, a very theatrical mind. It's an incredibly virtuosic piece for soprano and a big orchestra, and it's going to make its stage debut in this extraordinary production.
It features a wide range of unusual percussion instruments, some not initially intended to be used as instruments, and this sort of tour de force performance by the soprano.
A minefield of coloratura. It's the kind of thing, it makes Handel and bel canto look like kid stuff.
That's followed by Schoenberg's great monologue, Erwartung, or Expectation. It's an incredibly beautiful piece, maybe Schoenberg's most beautiful, and pre-serial. It's in the freely atonal period that included some of his most moving music. The libretto, incredibly, is by a woman called Marie Pappenheim, the sister of Freud's most famous patient, Anna O, the original so-called hysteric. So the piece is infused with a real expressionist and Freudian intensity. Rounding out this remarkable triptych is the only opera by Morton Feldman with a libretto by Samuel Beckett, also his only opera libretto. An amazing piece called Neither. It's in its New York stage premiere. It was given once in concert many years ago, but this will be the first time this masterpiece of a New York City composer is seen on stage.
One of the things that was really important to us when we were casting these operas is that they be sung beautifully. Not that someone could just hit the notes, but they be sung really musically, intelligently, and with a beautiful voice. And in Kara Shea Thompson and Cynthia Seton taking 2 of the lead roles, we have that.
That's one of the reasons why people flock to opera houses over the centuries, to see those moments, to see divas walking that dramatic and musical tightrope.
I think that it's going to be a very convincing evening for people who think that they don't like new music.
We finish our 2010-2011 season with a special project starring our own Lauren Flanagan. In fact, the piece was written for her, and not by anyone, but by one of America's great men of the theater, Stephen Schwartz. Stephen, who's written such shows as Wicked on Broadway now, and Godspell, and Pippin, and it's the first time he's turned his hand to opera, and this will be the first time it's seen on stage in New York City. In fact, the second production ever.
Stephen Schwartz's immediate connection with opera is all about his ability to create through his music this great operatic theatricality.
The story is a real thriller. It's a real potboiler. It's like going to an old 1940s movie.
A fame-hungry mystic hatches an ill-conceived plot to kidnap a girl to advance her career. It's a wonderful piece and a great conclusion to our glorious season of American operas.